Blog Talk Radio.
What happened?
The 2nd Spaceborne Squadron in the heart of Buckley Space Force Base in Colorado. Tens of thousands of miles above the Earth, the United States' space-based infrared system keeps a careful eye on the Earth, with a string of satellites in geostationary orbit around the planet. From this ultimate high ground, their unblinking electronic eyes monitor the planet's surface for infrared events. The satellites are supplemented by a constellation of surveillance platforms in lower orbits and networked together to track, identify, and report on any significant infrared event anywhere in the world. Originally, the network was operated by the Air Force and designed to detect nuclear tests conducted by the Soviet Union and other foreign nations. Then it was upgraded to provide early warning for ICBM launches. The massive heat plumes from the big intercontinental missiles are easily spotted, even from tens of thousands of miles above the Earth and through thick cloud cover. Now the system is so sensitive that it's able to track anti-ship missiles launched by the Houthi rebels in Yemen. And on January... January 7th, 2020, proved its worth when it gave early warning to U.S. forces in Iraq as they were targeted by dozens of missiles fired from Iran in retaliation for the killing of Qasem Soleimani. Not a single U.S. service member was killed in the massive attack, thanks to the advanced warning. War between China and the United States starts on a similar note, only on a much more massive scale. Tensions with China have been building for years as the nation becomes increasingly more assertive and determined to upend the U.S.-led liberal world order. China seeks to recreate the world in its own image and works to spread authoritarianism and suppress democracy around the world. Much like the Soviet Union in its early days, China believes that the survival of its ruling Chinese Communist Party relies on the spreading of its ideology around the world and beating back the influence of liberal democracies from its own borders. But China cannot be a major global power until it breaks U.S. influence in the Pacific, putting America and China on an inevitable collision course. At the moment, China is fully contained by the First Island Chain, a chain of islands stretching from Japan to Taiwan and the Philippines. The First Island Chain has contained communist nations since the Cold War. Any Chinese fleet sailing past this chain is under threat of attack from all sides, and China cannot secure its own vital trade shipping without breaking containment. The easiest way to break the chain is to invade Taiwan, which is already a priority goal for the CCP. This has made war between China and the U.S. seem all but inevitable. But before it can launch a successful cross-strait invasion, China must beat back the mighty U.S. Navy from the South Pacific. For this task, it's created the People's Liberation Army Rocket Force, an entire branch of the military dedicated to long-range missile warfare. With an arsenal of thousands of ballistic and anti-ship missiles, the PLARF is the greatest threat the U.S. Navy has faced in its entire history. And on the eve of war, it's the first to strike. All across the heartland of China, hundreds of missiles lift to the sky. Some are launched from silos. These are larger, long-range ballistic missiles, which will target U.S. bases as far away as Guam. Hawaii is within range as well, but the decision to strike Hawaii or not is a political one fraught with great risks. Not only would it be a direct attack on a U.S. state, but it threatens to galvanize the American people, as many would consider it a second Pearl Harbor. China's hope is that it can knock the U.S. out of the war in a massive preemptive strike, inflicting enough damage to the U.S. military hardware to render its Pacific forces combat ineffective and killing enough U.S. service members to discourage an American public China believes doesn't have the stomach for a painful extended war in the Pacific. Ultimately, it's decided that Hawaii is to be included in the attack. China has built up its own forces for a cross-strait invasion for months, sending a very clear signal to the world of its intentions. This has given the U.S. plenty of time to disperse its forces, holding back many of its ships and aircraft to Hawaii and out of range of all but the longest-range Chinese missiles. To not attack Hawaii would leave a significant amount of U.S. firepower intact and even harder to target as it disperses once more upon entering the theater. Likewise, the decision to attack U.S. bases in South Korea, Japan, and the Philippines is a difficult one for China. Attacking these bases means inevitably causing collateral damage to the host countries and risks dragging them into the war. However, not attacking these bases leaves most of America's Pacific combat power intact and able to retaliate with ease from Pacific airfields and ports. Ultimately, the choice is a pragmatic one. China is already bearing the weight of hefty pre-war sanctions meant to deter it from its course. It must win this war, and win it fast, and that means neutralizing all U.S. combat power, no matter where it is based. U.S. space surveillance satellites immediately spot the infrared signature of hundreds of ballistic missiles lifting to the sky. In less than 2 seconds after detection, the alarm is already blaring at U.S. Space Force's 2nd Space Warning Squadron. After a very quick verification that this is not an error, a priority flash alert is dispatched to the President of the United States, combatant commanders, and U.S. installations and ships around the world. China has timed a cyber operation against the U.S. military network simultaneously with its massive attack, but it's unable to defeat the multi-redundancy global alerting system used by the American military without physically blowing satellites out of orbit. The greatest concern is that some of these missiles could be nuclear in nature, and there is simply no way to tell until impact. The Department of Defense does not believe that China would launch a nuclear attack without significant provocation or unless the CCP found itself in a life-or-death scenario. But U.S. nuclear forces are put on their highest alert anyway. Space Force supercomputers, however, have calculated the trajectory of the Chinese threats, and none appear to be en route to the U.S. homeland, as would be the case in a nuclear attack. The White House bets on a conventional attack. At installations and ships across the Pacific, U.S. missile defenses get to work. Spy radars track the ballistic threats as Aegis computers work on a firing solution. Fleet air defenses spit out volleys of SM-3 missiles to intercept the incoming anti-ship ballistic missiles as they enter their terminal trajectories. On land, Patriot air defense batteries fire their own interceptors. Japanese self-defense forces add their own interceptors to the volleys racing up to the sky to meet the incoming threats. One by one, Chinese missiles are blown out of the sky, but China's anti-ship missile inventory is massive, and it has more than enough missiles to saturate the defenses of every U.S. vessel in its Pacific fleet. Hitting a moving target thousands of miles away, however, is not easy. So to improve their odds, U.S. ships begin erratic maneuvers. Its nuclear-powered aircraft carriers are leaving the rest of the fleet in the dust. Despite being the largest combat vessels in the world, the U.S. Navy's nuclear carrier fleet is capable of putting on bursts of speed at classified velocities. Movement complicates Chinese firing solutions, and some of the anti-ship missiles are off course as they re-enter the atmosphere and weather the volley of SM-3s. U.S. electronic attack against Chinese satellites is also complicating guidance, and some of the missiles who survive the hail of missile defenses smash into the ocean harmlessly. Many don't, however, using both satellite navigation and active radar guidance. Chinese DF-21s, dubbed carrier killers, pack a 600-kilogram conventional warhead. Over 1,300 pounds of high explosives smash into the deck of the USS Carl Vinson and Theodore Roosevelt, penetrating into the lower flight deck before detonating. The explosion is catastrophic, destroying hundreds of millions of dollars worth of aircraft and equipment. Even a near miss is enough to seriously damage the aft of a U.S. supercarrier, and in a flash, America's naval air power is almost completely knocked out of the war. At port facilities and airfields across the Pacific, Chinese missiles rain down and saturate air defenses, destroying aircraft on runways and inside soft shelters. Fuel and maintenance facilities are a priority target, but it's difficult to do much damage to fuel systems buried deep underground. Runways are cratered across the Pacific, but most of the damage can be repaired within hours by skilled crews. The worst of the damage will only knock an airfield out for a day or two at most. The damage to parked U.S. Air Force, Marines, and Navy aircraft, though, is significant. Having pulled back a significant amount of aircraft to Australia and Hawaii has limited the damage, but hundreds of U.S. and Allied aircraft are nonetheless damaged or destroyed. The missile attacks even extend all the way to joint U.S.-Australian air bases along the north coast of the continent. Inevitably, there is collateral damage. Multiple missiles stray off course and smash into civilian targets. Hundreds of Japanese, South Korean, and Filipino civilians are killed, along with scores of service members. China has, in effect, declared war on the entire U.S. Pacific alliance system, but the nation has no choice. If it's to win the Pacific, it has to deny the U.S. the ability to operate close to Taiwan battlespace, and that means dragging its allies and partners into the conflict. Day 2. The Chinese invasion of Taiwan is underway. A fleet of 1,000 ships, most of them smaller civilian vessels, has been assembled over the last 3 months and has been crossing the 100 miles between mainland China and Taiwan. The same missile assault that devastated U.S. forces in the Pacific laid waste to Taiwanese infrastructure as well. Military targets and airfields across the country came under attack from thousands of shorter-range missiles. It's the biggest missile attack in human history. But while Taiwan has suffered significant losses, it's been prepared for such an attack. The majority of its air force is safely secured inside hardened aircraft shelters and mountain tunnels. The airfields are devastated, but they can and will be quickly repaired. Already, Taiwanese F-16s are engaging in long-range, beyond-visual-range battles with their Chinese counterparts. The advantage in the air is decisively China's. Not only does it vastly outnumber Taiwan, but it's operating from airfields across the Chinese mainland that are out of reach from Taiwanese missile attack. Taiwan's sortie rates, meanwhile, are abysmal until the damaged airfields are repaired and aircraft are moved to stretches of highway to serve as impromptu runways. China, however, runs into the same problem that Russia did in its air war against Ukraine. Its lack of combat experience makes it difficult for it to deconflict the airspace over and around Taiwan. Friendly fire incidents from destroyers across the Taiwan Strait downing Chinese jets are disturbingly common. During Desert Storm, the U.S.-led coalition was able to deconflict the airspace over Iraq despite 4,000 operational combat air platforms at the time, resulting in only a small handful of blue-on-blue incidents. But the U.S. military trains aggressively and in conjunction with its various military branches. China has only recently unified its military under a single joint command and has only been running realistic training scenarios for a few years. The Chinese military is green, and it's paying the price for it. The amount of air power China can bring to bear over Taiwan is significant, but limited by its ability to keep its air defense network from blowing friendlies out of the sky or being vulnerable to enemy attack. This creates opportunities for Taiwan's beleaguered defenders. The cross-strait invasion fleet runs into a veritable wall of anti-ship missiles. Taiwan has been armed with hundreds of American-made Harpoon anti-ship missiles, which can be fired from F-16s or from ground-based launchers. The Harpoon is an old missile by modern standards and quickly being replaced in the U.S. military with a newer generation of anti-ship weapons, but it's still capable, especially so in large numbers. Its 488-pound warhead may not pack the punch of more modern 1,000-pound warheads, but it's more than enough to seriously damage or even cripple a medium-sized ship. The sky is full of Chinese anti-missile defenses, with missile interceptors flying out to smack Harpoons out of the sky and CIWS systems filling the air with tungsten. Inevitably, though, a significant number of these missiles punch through China's air defenses and wreak havoc on the invading fleet. Adding to the number of Harpoons is volleys of Xiangfang 2 and 3 missiles launched from mobile platforms. This helps them evade the People's Liberation Army Rocket Force's precision preparatory bombardment. The carnage is vast, but so too is China's numbers. Inevitably, its troops make landfall on one of the just over a dozen beaches suitable for the invasion. However, Taiwan has booby-trapped the beaches with all manner of defenses. Upon approaching, landing craft suddenly find the ocean around them on fire as pipes release oil into the ocean and set it on fire. Hundreds of Chinese Marines are incinerated in the landing craft. But once they hit the beach, they find boards with razor-sharp pieces of metal attached to them just under the sand. As the Chinese Marines hit the deck to crawl forward under a hail of enemy fire, their flesh is ripped apart. Then there's the landmines, thousands of them. Chinese aircraft and ships have attempted to blast safe paths through the vast minefields, stretching nearly 100 meters from the shore to the Taiwanese positions. But U.S.-supplied artillery shells can redeposit fresh minefields from a distance. Each shell carries up to 9 anti-vehicle mines, or many more smaller mines, and can create vast minefields with just a few volleys. That is, when the Chinese Marines aren't being shelled with anti-personnel high-explosive shells. The beaches have been sighted in. Defending artillery just needs to fire as quickly as it can reload. Chinese attack helicopters attempt to knock the artillery set up deep behind the beaches, but are greeted by swarms of man-portable air defense missiles. Incoming Chinese ships also have to navigate a massive minefield deployed by Taiwan in the weeks leading up to the invasion. The strait has not been safe for civilian traffic since the minefields were deployed, and China has attempted to use minesweepers to clear the strait. But these ships are easy prey for anti-ship Harpoons. Safe lanes through the floating mines are carved out with a combination of brute force and what minesweepers survive in their efforts. Chinese casualties are apocalyptic. It takes the concentrated might of the PLARF and the Chinese Air Force to blast the Taiwanese defenses apart so the amphibious assault can push out of the beaches. Even then, half of the assaults fail. Where they succeed, fresh Chinese troops must disembark only to wade their way through scores of their fallen comrades. D-Day pales in comparison. This isn't war. This is a slaughter. Day 3. China's problems have been compounded significantly with the arrival of U.S. air power. American carriers have been at arm's length with the use of ballistic missiles and H-6 bombers armed with standoff anti-ship missiles. However, a flight of H-6 attempting to perform a follow-up attack against Taiwan were pounced on by U.S. F-35s flying out of the Philippines, resulting in the loss of 16 bombers. The U.S. Air Force has recovered faster than expected from the PLARF's missile barrage, mostly by widely dispersing prior to the war and then by quickly converting civilian airfields in host nations to military ones. China's plans to use H-6s to keep the U.S. Navy at bay is canceled for the time being. The PLARF still has hundreds of missiles left, but they are a quickly diminishing resource and one that cannot be easily replenished. Neither can American air power, but the U.S. has nearly twice as many combat aircraft as China. They are overwhelmingly more modern than their Chinese counterparts. It'll take weeks to rotate the bulk of its firepower to the Pacific and repair destroyed logistics chains, but the U.S. and Japan are able to start air operations against China by the third day of the war, if on a limited scale. Rather than try to fight for the sky over Taiwan, U.S. aircraft launch standoff weapons at Chinese vessels in the Strait and those attempting to isolate the island by blockading it from the north and south. A new weapon enters the war, one that's being fielded for the first time, the U.S.'s Long-Range Anti-Ship Missile, or LRASM. This intelligent, stealthy missile can fly unguided to a target zone and then use artificial intelligence to choose its own target, ignoring civilian vessels and remaining undetected for far longer than its non-stealthy counterparts. It's not invisible to the radar, but it does allow the LRASM to get much closer before Chinese defenses attempt to intercept it, greatly increasing its survivability. Featuring a 1,000-pound blast fragmentation warhead, LRASMs aren't just twice as survivable as harpoons, they pack twice the punch against Chinese ships, and China's facing a significant amount of them. The U.S. has deployed the LRASM not just on F-15s, F-18s, and F-35s, but on a completely new and revolutionary platform codenamed Rapid Dragon. The concept is stunningly simple, but proved tricky to get right. Taking advantage of America's huge air mobility fleet, Rapid Dragon consists of stacks of missiles and air-droppable modules that are simply shoved out the back of transport aircraft. With up to 45 missiles per drop, Rapid Dragon utilizes C-130 and C-17 cargo planes, normally slow, vulnerable, and unarmed transports, to deliver cruise missiles against both land and naval targets at ranges of up to 570 miles. C-130 aircraft only need 3,000 feet of runway space to take off from, which has made it impossible for China to shut down every airfield in the Pacific that the aircraft could fly from. With 2 Rapid Dragon pallets each, for a total of 12 JASSM missiles, the U.S. is able to completely overwhelm China's air defenses from well outside the range of even its Air Force. C-17s flying from airfields as far away as the U.S. homeland link up with aerial tankers to refuel and approach the Taiwan battlespace. Each C-17 can carry 5 pallets of 9 JASSM missiles, and some of the pallets contain drone decoys instead of missiles. Other missile variants include sea mines, which scatter a wide area with deadly sea mines that wreak havoc on Chinese shipping. American submarines, meanwhile, have been making a meal of Chinese ships and attack submarines alike. China's submarine fleet is notoriously noisy, and only its newest subs are comparably silent. But these are still in low numbers. American attack subs first focus on eliminating the undersea threat, but many quickly transition to attacking Chinese surface vessels. With an average depth of 50 meters, the Taiwan Strait is too shallow for a submarine to safely operate in without being detected. But U.S. submarines have been equipped with long-range anti-ship missiles, which can be fired from their torpedo tubes. This allows them to engage surface vessels from well outside the strait, and the deep waters immediately off the eastern Taiwanese coast means they can get close enough to launch cruise missile strikes against Chinese forces landing on the island. America's silent surface, a threat overlooked by even U.S. analysts, is quickly proving to be its deadliest weapon against China. While the U.S. Navy's surface fleet still can't approach Taiwan due to the anti-ship threat, China's anti-submarine warfare capabilities are notoriously poor, and U.S. submarines are notoriously good at their job. Week 2. The air war over Taiwan has been joined in earnest at last, with U.S. and allied forces having weathered the Chinese missile storm. America's air fleets outnumber China's by 2-1, but a significant amount of its Pacific air power was destroyed on the ground or knocked out of commission in the opening hours of the surprise missile attack. Requests by the Air Force for hardened shelters in vulnerable airfields such as Guam have gone largely ignored by U.S. Congress for over a decade, and its aircraft have paid the toll. But the U.S. is able to bring in aircraft from other theaters, and Japan and Australia have both thrown in their air forces to the fight. South Korea has decided to engage targets of opportunity as they arise and provide security for U.S. tankers flying in its airspace, but its air force needs to be prepared for a possible attack by North Korea. There is a significant fear of North Korea exploiting the chaos to launch an attack to the south, effectively tying up large amounts of South Korean resources. Allied aircraft are on the whole better equipped and its pilots better trained than their People Liberation Army Air Force counterparts. But China has one significant advantage over the Allies, the PL-15, outranging American AIM-120s by as much as 10 miles. The PL-15 air-to-air missile is a deadly threat to Allied aircraft and gives Chinese fighters the ability to engage American, Australian, and Japanese aircraft well before they are able to. But the PL-15 can't hold F-35s and F-22s under the same threat. It's unknown at what ranges Chinese aircraft can detect and target U.S. stealth aircraft, but it's estimated to be at only 24 or so miles, allowing F-22s and F-35s to fire well before the Chinese fighters even realize they're there. However, China has its own stealth fighter, the J-20, or more accurately, a low observable fighter, as the J-20 stealth capabilities are significantly worse than that of its American counterparts. But this still allows J-20s to seriously threaten fourth-generation aircraft, such as the F-15, 16, and F-18s. And when equipped with the PL-15, makes them a deadly threat to anything but stealth aircraft. China has an estimated 200 of these aircraft, and it knows that it must use them wisely, so it sets them to the task of locating and destroying Allied AWACS platforms. This puts even F-22s and F-35s at risk, as the downing of an AWACS means friendly fighters must use their own radars to locate and prosecute targets. American stealth aircraft have some capability to passively detect enemy aircraft, especially those blasting out their own radar, and the AESA arrays can function as both a radar and a jammer to degrade enemy targeting radars. But the moment they light up their radars, their stealth is significantly compromised. The air war favors the Allies in the long run, but China in the short run, with its ability to fly directly from home bases and the mighty PL-15 in its inventory. The U.S. has a counter to China's missile, the AIM-260, which has an estimated 33% greater range than the PL-15, but the weapon is still not out of testing and into operational use. Month 2. Both sides have suffered catastrophic losses to their air fleets, but now the war shifts significantly to the Allies' favor. As J-16s and J-20s run in short supply, China's relying on older and older jets. To make matters worse, inland air bases have come under attack by submarine-launched cruise missiles and standoff weapons from American B-51 and B-1 bombers. Stealthy B-2 bombers slip inland to launch attacks against logistics networks and military bases on the mainland, a provocative move that many feared would be an escalation of the war. However, the U.S. cannot win unless it strikes directly at Chinese bases and slows the rate of operations. China's invasion is ground to a standstill as fighting rages for control over major Taiwanese cities. China carefully observed Russia's invasion of Ukraine and saw how Volodymyr Zelensky had been a rallying figure for both Ukraine's armed forces and the international community. Thus, at the start of the war, it activated assassination teams already on the island in an attempt to kill the Taiwanese president and senior government and military leadership. Under protection from their own special forces and with the invasion pending, the attacks were largely foiled, but several key generals and politicians were dispatched by China's kill teams. The U.S. Pacific Surface Fleet is now in the action and in the business of sinking Chinese ships. China has more ships than the U.S., approximately 246 more, but U.S. ships pack a bigger punch. This is benefits and drawbacks. U.S. ships can stay in the fight longer before needing resupply, but the loss of each U.S. vessel has a bigger impact on the overall force than a Chinese loss. However, the U.S. Navy has put its foot directly on China's jugular, and China had no hope of shaking it off. In the Straits of Malacca and the Gulf of Oman, U.S. Navy ships patrol for Chinese merchant vessels, with over 60% of its trade coming in via the ocean and the majority of its oil. China is critically dependent on sea trade for its economic prosperity, yet China's Navy doesn't have the ability to challenge the U.S. Navy far from its own shores and has no hope of dislodging the U.S. blockade, especially now that NATO ships have joined the effort. The attack on U.S. bases across the Pacific automatically triggered an Article 5 declaration, and while European power is largely concerned with containing further Russian aggression, America's European allies have been providing a steady stream of anti-ship missiles and air-to-air weapons. Now a number of their aircraft and both surface vessels and submarines have joined the fight in the Pacific. China's trade artery has been severed, and it faces a global alliance. Its only hope is to win the war in Taiwan quickly and force the government to capitulate. However, the Taiwanese people stubbornly refuse to surrender, and millions of people have volunteered to fight the invaders. Only a portion of them can be armed, but this means China must bring over 2 million troops across the strait if it hopes to pacify the island and its population. This is becoming increasingly impossible as the Allies achieve air and naval superiority over China, and Chinese oil supplies dwindle with U.S. submarine-launched cruise missile strikes against pipelines bringing in oil from Russia's Kamchatka Peninsula. The Chinese people are forced to ration oil and other supplies, growing increasingly unhappy with the toll of the war. They were promised a swift victory over Taiwan and its American allies, but Taiwan is refusing to capitulate. The war will rage for months more to come, with horrible losses on both sides. It will take America a decade to rebuild its air and naval forces, forcing it to lean heavily on its allies in the meantime to maintain global stability. But in the end, this is the U.S.'s greatest strength, its global network of partners and allies. China, meanwhile, will be economically devastated by a failed invasion, with the U.S. refusing to end the war until the entirety of the People's Liberation Army, Air Force, and Navy both are destroyed, so that China may not threaten the Pacific again. Now, go check out Germany's world.
All right, there you go. There you have it right there. That's a war with China there. Of course, there's like a dozen other simulations that could happen, you know, but basically, though, China does not have the capability to take out the United States. I mean, you know, so, you know, but we would be drained, like they said, so I don't think the war would go that way. I think it would be more towards the Middle East, because that's where all the action's at. So, but anyway, that was you know, it just shows you. But that China is our greatest threat, and Russia, well, of course, always is a threat. But anyway, so hopefully you guys enjoyed that simulation there. Got let's see here. I think I got one more here, real quick. I got to get that one lined up. So, 657-383-0616. The number one, if you want to talk. And but let's go back in history first, because we've got to figure out how we got to this place.
In December 1944, American forces were pummeled by German panzer divisions in the Ardennes Forest. It was a decisive moment in World War II. Hitler would either succeed in pushing back the approaching Allied armies. If he can drive the Americans and the British all the way back to the coastline, he may be able to force them into a negotiated peace. Late in October, the Germans began secretly moving their units to points east of the Ardennes without arousing Allied suspicions. 250,000 Germans rolled towards the Western Front. But officers in Allied intelligence refused to believe it. They all agree the Germans don't have the military strength for such an attack. Early morning on December 16th, a shattering barrage of German artillery and rocket fire lights the skies. Gloomy weather for the next several days provides effective cover for the German might that turns over the roads. Panzer units slash through. In the center, the Germans gouge a 12-mile corridor to the approaches of Bastogne. They are ordered to surround and bypass this town, then drive for the Meuse River. There is all-out confusion. Communications are sketchy. American troops discovered Germans in front and behind them. Panzers, under cover of fog and rain, slip into American armored columns, then blast the Americans off the road. More than 7,000 soldiers of the 106th destroy their weapons and give up. Next to Bataan, this is the largest mass surrender in military history. Elsewhere, with communications shattered, other Americans fight isolated holding actions. Gradually, small scattered units slow the German advance, especially around St. Vith.
The 5th Panzer Army had good success in the southern part of the invasion. However, the effects were not what the Germans had wanted. They were trying to race to the Meuse River in 2 days.
On the 3rd day, General Dwight Eisenhower orders General Patton's 3rd Army to attack the German flank and relieve Bastogne. December 20th, the Battle of the Bulge is in its 5th day. American forces are reeling under the impact of the mighty German offensive. General Patton and his 3rd Army are driving north toward Bastogne to counterattack. December 21st, a wintry snow falls throughout the Ardennes. St. Vith is taken by the Germans. Now the center route across the Ardennes is wide open. The Germans flow around Bastogne on all sides, encircling the American forces there.
They thought the Germans were beaten after the race across France. The Germans were not beaten.
December 22nd, the situation in Bastogne grows desperate. Ammunition is short. McAuliffe's artillery battalions are down to 10 rounds per gun, and it's still snowing. The cold causes more casualties. Frostbite is rampant among the troops. The Germans send an emissary to Bastogne with an ultimatum. Since the Americans are surrounded and there is only one possibility to save them from death, an honorable surrender. General McAuliffe's reply is short and to the point. McAuliffe's bravado is based on the expectation of the Third Army. General Patton's timetable is a critical factor. If the Germans move on Bastogne, they can easily take it at this point. The surrounded and undermanned U.S. Army watches and waits anxiously for reinforcements. The freezing cold conditions don't make it easier for either side. The next day, December 23rd, dawns bright and sunny. Perfect flying weather. Americans in Bastogne cheer as Allied planes fly overhead to bomb and scrape the enemy, to drop supplies. Not all that's needed, but enough to enable the Americans to hang on. On Christmas Day, news reaches Bastogne that the western spearhead of the German 2nd Panzer Division has been stopped, just short of the Meuse. When Hitler is told by his general, he orders the expected all-out attack. The Wehrmacht advances on Bastogne with 9 divisions, 4 of them armored. A great part of this effort is aimed at closing the American corridor to the south. On January 3rd, the Allies launch a 3-pronged counterattack. By January 16th, patrols from the 1st and 3rd Armies meet north of Bastogne. By early February, the Germans have been pushed back to where they started.
By the end of the Battle of the Bulge, they knew they couldn't win. And from that time on, the remains of the Panzer Lehr Division was sent to the Eastern Front, where it was eventually destroyed. It became clear that the German army no longer could fight on the Western Front.
All right. Okay. Well, that was your conclusion. Really, that was the last great battle the Germans fought. Well, we already know what happened in Berlin. We don't have to go there. We know the atrocities that happened afterwards too, with the Russians, what they did. You know, raping German women. The horrors that the Germans went through for 3 years. The last year of the war, and then a couple of years afterwards was just horrific, and it was buried. It was all the Germans. They're the evil ones, and but the Russians, what they did, that was nothing. So, but yeah, it was terrible. I've watched some of the videos and stuff that they put out there now, and it's horrific. I mean, you thought the Holocaust was bad. I mean, it was what the Russians did, it was just they bred animals, man, animals. I mean, those Mongolians and the Asiatic people that Stalin had fighting for him there, they're freaking beasts, man. But so and I was sitting there thinking, what would happen if America, say civil order broke down, which some cities now it pretty much has. But I was sitting in my kitchen last night. I'm saying, what if civil order broke down and we had foreign troops here and. The soldiers knocked on my door. Boom, 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 yelling or whatever. What would I do? I let them, So this is what happens in war. This is what happens. So watch when you vote. Pay attention to what the hell you're doing out there. Because I'm going to tell you right now, this is what these liberals are wanting to do. Destroy America. Okay? They want you to. They're disgusting people. These people, you cannot talk to them, you can't argue with them, you can't have a discussion with them at all. There is no deal with the devil. There's no deals. Just like the abortion issue, there's no deal. We lose the country because of it, so what? Listen, I'm not going to back down. Abortion is murder. Fact. Simple as that. My body, my body. No, it's not your body. You give up the right to your body when you have another life living in you, because take it up with God. Don't take it up with me, okay? That's the way it is. Simple as that. Who protects the life of the child? That child has entitled to protections. You're not going to kill it. That's all, because you wanted to have some fun. Too bad. That's the way it's got to be. You know, it's simple as that. Abortion is murder. And if we're going to allow abortion in this country, the fact of the matter is that we're not going to be a blessed country. We're a cursed country. I mean, 60 million plus babies murdered. Imagine those children, if they were alive today, what they could be, who they could be. What right do you have to take an innocent child's life? Because you don't want to, because you get whatever inconvenience or whatever. And then you got some women that have 6, 7 abortions. You know, it's disgusting. I tell you what, I don't want to stand next to them during Judgment Day. They're going to split hell wide open, you know? They think it's a joke. I think it's a joke, and it's funny. Some of these people out there that you think, boy, you know, you're killing innocent babies. You can't kill children. What does the Bible say? You hurt these little ones. That's it. You can't hurt children. You get nothing. They're not written in the book of life. So anyway, that's what I wanted to get to, actually. So with the war thing or whatever, is because people have a lot of questions about that life after death stuff. So, and I've been trying to study it and whatnot. So what better way so I went to Amazon Prime. Hang on here. I went to Amazon Prime here, and I was looked up some documentaries about, people that had near-death experience or died, supposamly, and try to figure out which one the best one would be without the nonsense in it. So, because, some stuff out there is garbage. So play a few minutes of this, and then if you got anybody wants to call in, go right ahead, press 1. And I saw about 6 or 7 people on the phone line there. So he's got to wait a few more minutes. Pressing 1 now.
I've seen a lot of spiritual phenomena in the emergency department which could not be explained by medical science.
We know that people are having these spiritual experiences.
They're widely reported by people who have nothing to gain by reporting them. And those experiences shouldn't be written off.
1 or 2 experiences is anecdote, but many is data, and we can learn from it.
I think you would be hard-pressed to find a single moment when there weren't any number of prominent philosophers, poets, theologians writing about, arguing for belief in the eternal preexistence of the human soul. An entire universe opens up to us, and we understand who we really are.
The heavens are speaking to us. We want to make sure that we're listening. I am Sarah Hines, and I was born and raised in eastern Tennessee, so I'm a Southern girl, and had a wonderful life there, a wonderful childhood, and moved away when I was 19, moved to Utah, and that's where I met my husband.
Hi, Candy.
Audrey. We have 9 children, and for many years they were all home at the same time. So it was a very busy time. But I had some special experiences with my children before they were conceived or born, in that I would have dreams of them or feeling them near. And I wondered, do other mothers and fathers have these experiences? And so it brought me to a strong desire to inquire and to see if I could collect other accounts. I made up a flyer, actually mailed it. It was before email. Mailed it out to newspapers and parts around the world. And I started receiving stories. The stories they're personal, they're often very sacred, And before I knew it, I had my first book, which we titled Life Before Life. That was published in the early 90s. I received quite a lot of opportunities for publicity with that book, and radio, television, and more stories came in, and before I knew it, I was ready for a second book. The second book, paperback, went to Simon Schuster Pocket Books, New York City. So I was now a national author, and I had pioneered actually a new study with the help of my husband. And those opportunities came in stories from around the world, from people of different backgrounds, races, religions, and that was really able to elevate the study. And so my publisher quite soon asked for another book, and we titled that Coming from the Light. At this point, we have republished Coming from the Light. We have published that now as The Announcing Dream, Dreams and Visions of Unborn Children. Well, I was fortunate to marry a wonderful man who has supported me in my studies. When we put together Coming from the Light, I asked him for an analysis of the studies, and we realized this study needed a term, it needed a name. We thought about near-death experience, so together Brent and I coined pre-birth experience.
As a psychologist, I've been trained in the study, analysis, and treatment of human behavior. And as I began studying these stories, the primary other research that could be considered authoritatively scientific was going on in the field of near-death studies. In 1969, Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, a fun, feisty little physician from Switzerland who came to America and was part of establishing the hospice program in America, she published a book called On Death and Dying, and it was one of the first really scientific studies. And then just a few years later, in 1975, Dr. Raymond Moody published a book titled Life After Life. And he explains that by this time, he'd had about 150 patients that had died clinically. And yet, when they were revived, they described all these things that they experienced while their body was dead.
A near-death experience is when someone dies and their spirit leaves their body. They're aware that they're leaving their body. They often look back and see their body behind. And a remarkable thing in a near-death experience that I learned is the most prevalent reason people are sent back is because they meet their unborn children on the other side. And they're told they need to go back because their mission in life has not been completed.
One of the objections from some pure scientists, let us say, is, oh, this kind of information is anecdotal. But one of the things that really impressed me in one of the researches that I read, this psychologist, he said, yeah, one or two experiences is anecdote, but many is data, and we can learn from it. That inspired me. And so I began analyzing the pre-birth experience from kind of a similar position. In the 30 years that we have been dealing with this research on pre-birth experiences, about 53% of the pre-birth encounters occur before conception, leaving 47% in our samples that occurred between conception and birth. We also found that 63%, almost two-thirds of these experiences came to mommies, 13% to future daddies. 24% of these experiences came to grandparents, to siblings. We have now analyzed hundreds of pre-birth experiences, and I've gone through them, many of them, and come up with different types of pre-birth experience that occurs. 16 preborn beings in one sample were witnessed in dreams, appearances while the experiencer was asleep. 29 occurred in visions when the recipient was awake and alert. Some of these experiences, it's not the child that comes, but it's somebody else announcing that the child is ready to come to earth. 20 preborn experiences that I've studied heard the voice of a preborn spirit. Telepathy in 13 of the experiences where the message came not through the ears but into the mind. 29 had an escort of some type with them. And in the near-death research, there are many escorts and greeters who are identified when a person leaves this life. Some people have deja vu memories or flashbacks, and 10 individuals saw a brilliant light around the pre-birth soul.
Every account that I have heard or read is very unique. It's very individual to that person. A story that may touch one person's heart may touch a different person, in a different way, or a different story will touch them. Dr. Kenneth Ring, who wrote the book Heading Toward Omega, has said that people can change and become enriched not only by having a near-death experience or by having a pre-birth experience, but by reading the accounts of those who have them can cause the same kind of enrichment to the individual.
I was born into a very large family. That was a wonderful experience for me. After I graduated from high school, I went off to be a nanny and came back home, and then I met my first husband. We were only married 7 years, and then he died at age 27 with a brain tumor. Not too soon later, I met my husband now, Scott Greenouch. He had 2 children. He also lost his first wife to cancer, a brain tumor as well, and she was 22. So we started our little group of his 2 and my 3, and then we ended up having 7 more together. Our first child that we had was a stillborn boy. I was about 7 months along with him. And then I had other children, and then one of my pregnancies, my 9th pregnancy, was quite profound for me. When I was about almost 8 months along, I had not felt the movement like I normally felt. And I was kind of concerned because 3 weeks previous I'd been to the doctor, and she was a week ahead of her growth, and I was all excited, and I was going to name her Shalom Adele. So the day that I started not feeling movement, because I'd had this experience before of threatening to lose babies, I knew what to do. So I went and got my orange juice and drank my orange juice because that sugar, high sugar, is supposed to wake that baby up. So I went to drink the orange juice and waited a while, and there was no movement. And so I got a little bit more concerned, and I then lay down on my tummy, which she did not like me laying down on my tummy. No kicking, nothing. I thought, oh no, my heart just started to race even more. So then I called the doctor, and he said, come on in. So during this time period of great silence and quiet time, I did a lot of praying, and I held my baby, my tummy, and said, are you okay? And just praying it should be okay. While I was praying, I had a beautiful experience. In the corner of I call it my little parlor. I love the old-fashioned names. And she's standing there in the corner, her back towards me, and she had a short haircut, and she was about the age of 16 or 18 years old. And she turns around so quickly, and her little hair just flips so cute, and she had this smile on her face. And she looked at me and she said, "Thank you for my body." And then she was gone. And I'm like, okay, wait a minute. Did I just see what I saw? Did I just experience her spirit? And so when I got to the doctors, they hurried and monitored, and the baby's heart rate was just dropping very quickly. So he gave me the option. He said, "Christine, we can just let the baby go." And I said, "But Dr. Parker, you've seen miracles." He said, "Yes, I have." I said, "I want a miracle." So he hurried and rushed me in to do emergency C-section. Of course, I was out and under so fast. And then when I came to, they told me that they had tried for 23 minutes to resuscitate her, but she had gone. Later, over time, I realized I did get my miracle. She let me know that she was okay and that she didn't need any more time here. She just needed to get her body. So after about 3 days, we had a little family gathering down at the cemetery where we were to bury her with her brother. My dear brother-in-law came up to me afterwards. He said, "Do you know what shalom means?" He says, "It means hello, goodbye, and peace." And I thought, how fitting, because she said hello and goodbye the very same day, but it also brought peace with that.
There have been many definitions of the soul historically. Sometimes the soul is differentiated from the spirit. Sometimes soul and spirit are used interchangeably, but in general terms, when one refers to the soul in literature, ancient or modern, one is referring to the essential core of human identity. But the soul is that which persists after death, and in many cases, that which pre-exists the person before birth. Going back to the very earliest texts that exist, of which we have record or notice in the Western tradition, one would go back about 2000 BC, and one finds reference to the human soul as something which exists independently of and prior to its human form. I think you would be hard-pressed to find a single moment in Western intellectual or religious history when there weren't any number of prominent philosophers, poets, theologians writing about, arguing for belief in the eternal preexistence of the human soul. We go back to Plato, the father of Western philosophy, and we find at least 4 or 5 of his dialogues were preoccupied with positing and arguing for the reality of the soul as a preexistent entity. It's been argued by any number of contemporary philosophers. To just take one common example, the philosopher John Knox, for example, has said that we all intuitively recognize a soul that precedes our mortal form when we say something like, "If I had been born in China." Well, obviously, if you're positing an I before it actually has a mortal form, then you intuitively feel the reasonableness, right, of positing this self that precedes any particular incarnation. One could talk about some of the greatest philosophers in the Western tradition. I'm thinking, for example, of the great philosopher Immanuel Kant, who had at least 3 separate arguments that he made. He was convinced that there does exist free will. So if we're free, there must be some part of us that pre-existed our material form. A second argument was the fact that he said experience is only meaningful to us because we assimilate it to pre-existent categories of thought. His third argument was more an argument from intuition. That moment of sexual congress must actually simply be housing a spirit which God had already created or had existed eternally. One could go to more contemporary sources and find one of the greatest poems, but little known, by Robert Frost, called Trial by Existence, in which he imagines that moment in a pre-earthly realm when we all had to make the decision as to whether or not to brave the dangers and vicissitudes of this mortal incarnation. And it's really a kind of heroic hymn of praise to the courage of those who made the decision to descend into this mortal sphere. Eastern traditions very frequently believe in a perpetual cycle of reincarnation, re-embodiment, or transmigration of souls. Plato sometimes alluded to his belief in a cycle of reincarnation. But at other times, Plato's conception was much more linear, And it's the linear conception that really prevailed in Western thinking, that we had one premortal stage of existence. We are now incarnate, and we will move on to a third stage of post-mortal existence, but there will be no return to a mortal state more than just the one time that we know here and now.
The concept of a premortal existence for human beings is surprisingly common in the ancient world. In many ancient texts, there are passages that allude to premortal existence or the possibility of it. In the Bible, beyond the Bible, where a mother in particular, or a prospective mother, is given to understand by angelic announcement or by a dream or something like that, that she's going to have a child. Characteristics are known before the child is born. And then, of course, Jeremiah is told before he was formed in the belly, God knew him. There has to be an object of knowledge. I mean, God knows him. It's not God knew about him or God intended to make him a certain way. God knew him before he was formed. There's a wonderful Christian text called the Hymn of the Pearl. It tells the story of the Emperor of India, and he sends a son to go into Egypt, which represents the world. And there's a pearl there that he's lost, that he wants retrieved. But he warns him, when you get there, Egypt is going to be so seductive, so distracting, and he forgets who he is, he forgets what he's there for. And so finally his father, the Emperor of India, sends his eldest son, the trusted prince, to Egypt to retrieve his younger son and bring him back, remind him who he is, and bring him back out of Egypt to India. And it clearly presupposes the idea of a premortal existence.
My name's Glenda Christians. I was born in California, spent a lot of my life in Arizona and California, kind of going back and forth. I'm now in West Jordan, Utah, with my 4 grown children, 13 grandchildren. I've had a wonderful career as a nurse and a nursing professor. I'm also the past president of the American Holistic Nurses Association and a certified holistic nurse with a PhD. So life is good, and I'm retired. That's why life is good. So I think I must have been about 4 months pregnant. It was 1976. I wasn't really happy with my pregnancy and my marriage. I was just generally kind of unhappy. One evening, my husband and I got into an argument, and I went to bed kind of early, just laying in bed, feeling sorry for myself, thinking, oh, what have I done? What am I doing? And so I was praying, and as I was praying and crying, I noticed somebody at the door of the bedroom, just over to my left at the door. And it was this beautiful young woman, long, straight, blonde hair, thin, I'm going to say glowing, because very white, and it seemed pure. And I was just really struck by her peace. She just had this, like, serious sort of look on her face, but very peaceful. And I was calm. You'd think that would wig me out, but no, I was very, very calm. She walked over to the side of my bed. So she was to my left. So I was laying down. She's right next to the bed. And again, that same beautiful face filled with love and peace and beauty. And that self-confidence, that grounding and yet humility, I can't explain at all, but there was that connection. I just looked up at her, and I knew that was my daughter. It was almost like she was saying, calm down, it's going to be okay. So the next thing I really remember is I just fell peacefully asleep, and the very next morning I woke up, and it was the first time ever I had felt her move inside of me.
In many ancient traditions, Greek, Babylonian, Mesopotamian, there's a conception of the human soul as an eternal entity. And one of the ways in which this entity is depicted is generally as a winged creature, a winged soul. And in many of these traditions, there is a specific reference to that moment when this soul loses its wings and thereby prepares to enter mortality, either by way of ascent or descent into this mortal sphere, in which they immerse themselves in a mortal condition prior to reascending to their earlier state. One of the most famous paintings in world art is probably the painting done by Michelangelo, which is in the Sistine Chapel, called The Creation of Adam. Most of the focus generally is on that extended hand of God reaching out to touch Adam's finger, the moment when he is infused with life, with the breath of life, the spirit. What isn't as commonly noticed is the background to God the Father, who is actually orchestrating this moment of creation. What you see is, in hovering in the background, an assemblage of personages. Now the question is, who are these people, and what is the meaning of their presentation at that moment of creation? And I'm convinced, as are any number of art historians, that Michelangelo is implicitly here representing his belief in the pre-existent or pre-mortal existence of the entire human family.
You also have images of the war in heaven, the battle with the dragon that's referred to in the book of Revelation. And you have the hosts of heaven. The question is, who are the hosts of heaven? Most religious traditions say they're a different form of being, intermediate between humans and the divine. But others have suggested that these were, in fact, the premortal souls or the postmortal souls. I'm not sure there's much difference, really, of humans who are involved in this, who have an interest in the outcome of the war between good and evil, light and darkness.
The earliest creation narrative, probably, of which we have any record is Atrahasis, an ancient Near Eastern creation narrative in which a council of gods gather. They're tired of the labor of providing for themselves through toiling in the earth, and so they decide to create a race of beings that will do the labor of the gods. But it's decided that they need to infuse this shell of clay with a spirit, and that becomes the first human. But they cast a veil of forgetfulness over it so that it will forget its origin in the heavens.
My name is Karina Bayende. I grew up in a large family. I'm the second oldest of 10. In upstate New York, I met a young man that I dated for a year and a half, and I wasn't sure if I should marry him or not. I wasn't sure if he was the right guy for me. I never could get myself to say that I would marry him. One night, I had a dream, and my boyfriend at the time was standing in front of me. He started floating away into the distance, and I noticed that there's this young man standing to my left. And he looked at me, but he did a double take, and he was like, wow, she can see me. And he got all excited and almost jumped up and down, like jumping up and down, kind of excited. And I woke up, and I was trying to interpret the dream, and the thought came to me that he was my son. And it got me through so many hard times because I knew that I was going to meet my husband and I was going to have a son.
My name is Theodore Bayende, AKZ. From the Congo. I was born and raised in the Congo, and I moved to Utah 3 years ago from Georgia because I went to school in Georgia. And when I got to Utah, I started going on dates.
We decided to give it a shot and go on a date. He had an interview, and he didn't know the area very well, so his job interview went over, and I think he got lost. And then this young, handsome African man started walking up towards me in my car and apologized for being late. And then we started talking, and then we started walking along the shore of the Great Salt Lake.
It was a really easy date because we felt like we knew each other before. My reaction when she first told me about the dream, I was just amazed by that because not a lot of people get that opportunity to see their boy before they actually come to Earth. And when we first met the baby, it was like, okay, this is the baby that Karina saw 8 years ago.
And when I was pregnant with him, people would ask me if they thought I was going to have a girl or a boy, and I was like, oh, I'm pretty certain it's a boy. And I'm really happy to have him.
Another type of pre-birth experience is that an unborn spirit appears to a family that cannot have children with the announcement, I will be born to a different biological mother, but I will come to you.
My name is Jenny Jones. I'm married to Levi Jones, and we have a family that is quite diverse. I have 8 children, and when we were married, I had 7, so he's been quite the trooper to come in and take on 7 children. And through various experiences, I started to have dreams, and in these dreams, I would always see a little girl who was dark complected, and my husband and I, we were both Caucasian, and she had a very dark complexion and very, very long black hair down to her waist. And in these dreams, just randomly, she would just come running through. I'd be in a garden setting or going for a walk, and in these dreams, she would come running in and so quickly grab me and say, Mommy, I love you. And she would just hug me and run off playing. A couple of the dreams I had, which it was a little strange to me at the time, but in one of them, she was in a backpack carrier at an older age, maybe like 3 or 4, not at an age I would normally be carrying a child on my back because they're more independent. And in the dream, she wrapped her little arm around me and patted my cheek and said, I love you, Mommy. And it just seemed that there was someone missing. She was knocking, and it was repetitive. Over 5 years, I had these dreams. And one day I woke up, and I had had another dream. And in that dream, this woman brought a little boy to me, and he also was dark complected, and she said, this one is yours. Even in the dream, I was like, wait. I thought I had a girl coming. And she said, this is yours. And I said, well, how will I know he's mine? And she said, you will know when you hear his name. So I woke up, and I was totally confused, and I was doing my everyday and happened to see a foster care yard sale. It was to help raise money for a foster family, a family of foster children. And the mother who was the foster mom in charge of the whole yard sale came and asked me, are you buying these clothes for a child? And I said, no, I feel like I might be adopting a child. And so little did I know that her foster daughter was listening to the exchange, to our conversation. A few months later, it was like 3 months later, I received a phone call. It was the foster mom at the yard sale, and she said, are you still planning on adopting? And I said, well, yes. She said, well, the girl that I am watching, the foster daughter in my home, has informed me today that she cannot take care of this 3-week-old baby, and she has a big support system and a lot of people willing to help her, but she is adamant that I find the woman who is at the yard sale with the 5 kids. She's the mother of this child. And obviously it was tears, and I just felt so strong that this was happening. I still had hesitancy because of so many dreams about the girl. So I said, can you bring him over? And she was sick that day, and so she brought him over and actually left him with me to watch. And I looked at him, and I asked his name, and she said his name is Jose. And when she said that, I was taken aback because I have a brother who passed away. I could hear my brother say, my name is Jose. And I just felt so strongly that that was the child. And he was a joy. He wanted to be there. And it was a journey to get him there permanently. In our religion, we have a very special ceremony. And I was dressing him in his white tuxedo.
and he was 18 months old. Sorry, I'm crying. And the mother came and helped me to dress him. She was only 16 years old, and she just always told me how grateful she was that we were his family. I remember very clearly one day I walked through my kitchen. I remember taking off the wall phone, and I remember answering, and she was the sister of the birth mom of my first child. She just straight to the point, "Are you still adopting?" And I thought, my goodness, word travels fast. Yes, I'm adopting, and can I help you? And she said, well, good, because I've got a whole bunch of other kids, and I'm pregnant and homeless, and I'm having a baby, and I want you to take her. I asked her what the gender was at that time, and she said that it was a girl. And the very next day, I received a phone call. It was the mother, and she said, I'm having the baby, come to the hospital. So I got there, and it was a very quick process. I went in, she handed the baby to me. It was the conclusion of this big, long saga. And the special, beautiful thing about this specific daughter is that she is an abortion survivor. We were told she would never walk or talk. And she now today is walking and talking, and she rides a bike by herself, no training wheels. She's a dancer. She dances in concerts twice a year, and every time she does, I cry because I look at her and I realize she's changed our world as much as we've changed hers.
We know that many narratives, both rabbinical through Hasidic traditions, also appearing in New Testament literature coming out of a Jewish past, clearly alluded to a commonplace belief in the preexistence of the human soul. We see in John chapter 9, for example, in the New Testament, where Jesus' Jewish followers asked him who sinned, a blind man or his parents, that he would be born into a state of blindness, obviously presupposing the possibility of acting and sinning in a preexistent world. One of my favorite Jewish legends relates to the nature of preexistence, and it's an explanation for that delicate facial feature called the philtrum. And this is the story of how that comes about. At that moment when a mother and father are about to engender a child, the angel Gabriel goes to the treasury of souls, where all angels or all spirits wait for their moment of embodiment. He brings forth the child designated for that couple, and the angel reveals to this spirit who those people are, what his relationship to them will be, what his mission will be in this life that he is about to embark upon. And then having told the spirit all of these things, he places his finger to the lip of the spirit and says, shh, now you must forget it all. And then he ushers the child into that womb who, having arrived as an infant, is now forgetful of everything that preceded. There's no question, and I don't think any scholar of early Christianity would dispute the fact that belief in the preexistence of the human soul was commonly accepted. It was a commonplace among early Christian thinkers. Even the most influential thinkers in the Christian tradition, like St. Augustine himself, was a fervent defender of belief in the preexistence, at least early in his life he was. His argument was simple. He said, if you're looking for a lost key, then you must have known the key before you knew what to look for. In a similar way, he says, we're all looking for happiness. We're all looking for eternal joy. Therefore, we must have known happiness and eternal joy in some state before the one we currently inhabit. Origen, generally considered one of the founding fathers of the Christian tradition, wrote the first treatise on Christian doctrine, was absolutely convinced that we had all lived as spirit entities in God's presence.
All right, here we go. All right. Okay. All right. This documentary goes on for a long time, but that's interesting, knowing, for near-death experiences and people. And by the way, just so people know, whoever's listening now, and probably I don't know, it's going to be 2-3 weeks from now, I'm going to know somebody who's going to come on the podcast. Supposedly they're one of these people like Let me see. How do I say it? Like, remember that movie that came out with the doll, that whatever that girl was, that one woman that died. What the hell was her name? Warren or whatever. Like one of those medium types of things, whatever. Yeah, I got one of those people coming on here. So I think in about 3 weeks, 3 or 4 weeks from now. So I could probably do it in 2 weeks, but I got something going on, so I don't want to book it. But it's Blog Talk Radio. It doesn't screw me over, and I'm a little scared about booking a guest because of Blog Talk Radio and their crap. So, yeah. So we'll get a medium on here, and supposedly this person is well known, and I'm not gonna say the name right now, but it's very well known. Lots of books, very very popular. So. We'll see what happens, and that should be a good show. And then people can call in and ask questions if they want, and we'll see if this person's, on the money or not, I guess. I don't like doing that, really, but, predicting the futures and stuff like that, you're not supposed to, but we'll see what happens. Anyway, let me get this up, go back to my studio here. If I can get back to my studio, because I'm having trouble here now. And I'll see if anybody's got their hand up. Not. Because I know that was kind of long, that documentary there. Damn it, man, where the hell is my studio at? Bear with me here.
On your phone's camera.
Let me turn that down. Son of a bitch. Where the hell is my studio at? What window is it in? It disappeared. Hang on. It's over on this browser right here. It's got to be. Okay, here we go. All right, here it is right here. Okay. All right, there we go. All right, here we go. 657-383-0616. Press the number 1 if you got like anything you want to say. If not, then that's fine. We had a bunch of people waiting there for a while. But, hey, if people don't want to know what happens to them after they die, I mean, a couple people hung up. So, hey, you want to know what happens to you after you die, then that's, on you. People, this is the problem. We have it in this country today is we've got, America is really just it's really the whore of Babylon. I mean, it's just people are lazy, they're worthless, they don't want to stand up for themselves, and this is what we get today. So anyway, let me see here. Somebody sent me a message here. Let me read that. I was waiting on hold for 15 minutes or whatever. Well, too bad. You go to other shows and talk about nothing. So get lost then. Don't come back. I don't care how long you're waiting on hold for. I don't care if you're waiting on hold for an hour. That's all it's to it. I asked people to press 1 when I first started. You didn't press it, so there you go. I went on to do other things. You don't like it, too bad. I don't care. Nobody calls in for all I care. I'll hang up on everybody. We listen to it in downloads. I really don't care. Idiot, send me a message like that. Don't send me messages like that. I'm not going to say who it was, but, don't just send me a message like that. And there's a couple other trolls here, too. I don't care. Anyway, what do you want to talk about? Jews? You want to talk about Jews? You want to do Jew bashing? Is that what you want to do? You can report me to the news media? Huh? Is that what you want to do? Yeah. I know how you are. That's what we want to do. Yeah, so you can snitch me out. Yeah, I know what you're up to, some of you. You little snakes. I know what. I'm stupid. I was born on a Sunday, but it wasn't last Sunday. Anyway, also, let people know, American Statesman there, I see her, she was in the chat room there. Let everybody know, next Monday, we're going to be doing a show over there with her. We're going to be talking about the Federal Reserve and money, and actually draft up legislation in case I was elected, which I wasn't, but for competing currencies and whatnot, and e-commerce legislation, so I'll talk about that. This stuff that could help people out, but, you can't help out some people in this world today. I had 3 people hang up. 3 people. You couldn't wait. I mean, you got so much to do, so important. You got such an important life. You couldn't wait. Good. I don't want to debate with anybody anyway. All right. Anyway, okay. Let's see here. What else here? One more thing here. I got one more thing. All right. 65. Yeah. For the other people that don't know the number to call in, you should know it by now. 657-383-0616. Press 1. But yeah, I'll be on American Statesman next Monday. So Sally, yeah, I got that. Hopefully you were, I don't know if you're still listening or not. I saw you were in the chat room, but, all right. Let me see, read this message here. Okay. I got one, news story here to cover, and then, I'll say, hey, people want to call back in. That's fine. I got 3 people online now, but there's private callers. So, like I said, if you want to call back in if you're listening. And if you're not listening, that's it. Get lost in. I don't care. All right. Go to this. Get this news story up here. This is important. But if you missed the beginning of the show, the people that just called in now, if you missed the beginning, I did a war simulation between America and China, actually. So that's that's probably going to be our next war. That's probably who we're going to be fighting, But but America wins in every simulation. That's how the military does it. They do it with the AI stuff. They do a simulated wars with China, Russia, stuff like that, and see, do the outcomes. I mean, that's like they play these war games. The military. I'm sure most people in the military know that. And I did mine with China. So China, China's got a bigger Navy than we have, and bigger Air Force actually. So and obviously bigger troops, bigger army. So massive Trump. Let's see here. What's the news story? Massive development. Trump pledges to release all Jeffrey Epstein's information, including full list of visitors to Pedo Island. So he plans on. So I thought I had that. Didn't we already have that on the internet? Epstein's Black Book or whatever. Investigative journalist discovers the last location of 8,000 children disappeared. So that's one of the stories that I want to talk about there. So go into that because I've been looking into that, the human trafficking and all that crap that's going on. So this is an important story. Let's see here. Play this clip right here real quick about human trafficking.
Military-aged men walking around armed, busting down a door. And, obviously it's horrible. People need to understand is that is not an anomaly. That's happening across the country. So we've been knocking across over 10 different states with this list that was provided to us by a government insider. The list has the names of over 8,000 illegal alien children, the addresses that they were delivered to. We've been knocking all across the country over the last 3 months. And the apartment complexes that we go to, basically every time, are essentially what you see there in that viral video from Aurora in Colorado. My point is that is not an anomaly. That is across basically every state now. I say basically, maybe it's not in Alaska. I'm not too sure. I've never been there. But pretty much every state in the continental United States, you have apartment complexes just like this. And the areas that we would knock looking for the children that we are going to show in this documentary live in apartment complexes just like this. I have story after story. There's so many stories that I've forgotten all the details at this point. But, this type of stuff is happening everywhere. We basically investigated a trafficking case in Florida. And to give people some context here, this is a case that was referred to the Department of Health and Human Services over 3 years ago. Homeland Security had also been referred to this case and apparently was investigating it and got nowhere with it. They did absolutely nothing. They did some preliminary knocking, probably just showing that, yeah, we're out here, we're trying to do something, but they got absolutely nowhere. They didn't find the kids. It took myself and 2 other men, just some, hardcore journalism, going out there knocking and using our brains to find these kids and being able to pull off what Homeland Security was unable to do. And we got the stories from 2 of these children that were delivered into a trafficking ring in Florida. This is a Guatemalan man who has received many, many kids. Confirmed his network has received around 19 children, but that's based off of the old list that we have. So it's likely that they've received many more. And these children were telling us, we got here, and immediately there was a debt slapped on our head. Over the last few years, we have been basically in debt servitude. They've been threatening us, continuously for this debt. And, the story goes on, but at a high level, that's what we got, and we were able to find 2 of these kids. Again, Homeland Security was unable to pull this off. There were some very, very suspicious cases. For example, the trafficking case in Florida. And when there was a census printed, so they basically had a census taken of all the kids that had been taken in and then subsequently delivered out of this intake shelter, right? There were actually names that were scrubbed from that census, and nobody knows what's happened to them. So somebody actually went in and scrubbed the names off of that census. Because if you have that census, which I do, and you look for the names of the children that were delivered to this Florida address, it's not there. It's only because there were brave people that were had the foresight to actually take the names out of the database beforehand. that we have that information, but on the census that they printed out and saved, there are many, many names of children that were delivered to egregious situations that are not there. So nobody knows where those kids went, and there needs to be a massive investigation into that. That's beyond the scope of my power. I can't do that, but a guy like President Trump needs to get this information and do something about it.
What would you call these, ghost children?
Sure. Ghost children, that's a good name. Absolutely. Children where there is no documented record of it. I mean, the thought is, the allegation is, I suppose, that somebody actually went in and deleted these kids off of whatever database record there was on them in the Pomona intake shelter system, because as far as anybody's aware, those records are gone now. You can't find them. If you look for the kids that we found that were admitted to being trafficked in Florida, and you look for them in the Pomona system, you will not find them.
While other networks lie to you about what's happening now, InfoWars tells you the truth about what's happening next. Visit Info.
All right, there you go. Human trafficking of kids around the country. There's another piece of this thing. I want to give her the commercial on you here. Yeah, kids, this is an investigative journalist. He discovered the location of 8,000 children disappeared by Kamala Harris. So, her regime is connected to this. They are Biden and them, whatnot, especially the Catholic Church. Human trafficking is disgusting. That's going on. There's things and cases, stuff that I'm not going to talk about right now, but I've gotten case files that from some groups, because I wanted to go into that field, actually, the human trafficking, expose that. So, and if anybody knows or listens to my podcast show many years ago, I was hooked up with Terry LaPointe for medical kidnap, and a lot of CPS cases I was exposing. I was doing interviews with mothers and everything, and I took a lot of flack for that. And then there was Lisa Mitchell I came in contact with. She was exposing a judge and some big trafficking ring out there, and she disappeared, actually. She's disappeared, so nobody knows what the hell happened to her. She was on my podcast show several times, actually, so that's crazy. So this is very big. This is a huge money business, this human trafficking and smuggling. So people need to really understand that. What is this, a recording? No, it's not a recording. It's live. It's live, Kat. So I was talking about well, I'm not going to go over it, what I was talking about. And I see Shabaka was in the chat room, too. Well, yeah, let's go over to Shabaka's show and go listen to that bull crap. Go ahead. Let's go argue about the same thing. Reparations. Let's talk about reparations and how the black man's owed all kinds of money. And, and he gives his narrative of what history really is and what he wants history to be and what the future is going to be. They deserve money. The Black Panther Network or whatever he's called over there. They deserve all kinds of money to get paid. You owe him trillions of dollars because the country was built on the backs of black people. Yeah, okay, whatever. So go ahead and go over there and argue about that stuff. That's what you want to do. Because that's why a person was sending me that message. It's the same argument. It's a boring argument. It's repetitive. It's the same damn thing. But anyway, here's the second part of that story about the human trafficking here. Let's get that going.
Major documentary report coming out in a few weeks. It'll be in studio to premiere, confirming with eyewitnesses, documents, tracking it, that the federal government itself, we already knew this, but here's footage of it, smuggling the kids and giving them to child traffickers, including sex traffickers. And we're going to play a short clip again of Trump talking about this now in his speeches, the 325,000 missing children in sex slavery and in regular manual slavery, slave labor. Even the New York Times reports that over a year and a half ago, but it's getting worse. I've said 100 times last hour probably, till your ears bled, that Trump needs to not just say he's going to shut the border down, but he's going to find the children and they're going to prosecute who was behind this, and we know who was behind it. And who ended the DNA testing, Kamala Harris, Mayorkas, all of them. The NGOs, the charities, the Catholic, the Jewish charities, they're the two biggest. What they're called, Catholic charities, Jewish charities. Mayorkas is on the board of the Jewish charity. And so this is pure evil. I mean, remember, the Catholic Church got in all that trouble for covering up sex scandals. Well, this, or the Boy Scouts, this is the government working with these groups doing it. It's pure evil. I know it makes a lot of folks mad, makes me mad. But before I play that Trump clip and then go to our guest, I read the local news. So I said the last few weeks, we saw Venezuelans the last year saying, we're coming to America, we're going to take your property, we're going to take your homes, take your apartments. And it's happening all over the place. That it's not just Colorado. It's in Houston. It's not just Denver and Aurora. It's in San Francisco. It's in L.A. It's going on in New York City. We've shown the footage. We've had the guest on. And it's MS-13. It's Venezuelan gangs. It's all these other gangs. And it's these predators that come like flies to you-know-what to feed on the children. Well, this is on the local news, CBS News, ABC News. Chicago police called over armed Venezuelan migrants in apartment complex, taking it over. And here is the 911 call. So this just broke last night. Here it is.
Unit 10-3, I'm citywide person with a gun, 6124 South King Drive. Caller says 32 Venezuelans are trespassing the building, showing guns in the courtyard, and they have motorcycles in the courtyard as well. Well, they're filled. Nothing further is unclear.
And then there's more calls. So we're going to be getting to more of that as it unfolds. And the police are told, don't respond. 32 armed Venezuelan street gangs taking over apartment complex. And you heard the local news in Denver. They're told, don't send the police. Or just send a couple cops if you have to, but don't run them out. And the governor said it's a fantasy. It's a fantasy. Now, here's Trump talking about the elephant in the room. He needs to do the rest of it. He says 2, well, but another 2 makes 4. He needs to complete the circuit and say we're going to shut down the border, we're going to find the missing kids, we're going to deport the military-age men, we're going to save the children, we're going to prosecute who's behind it. Justice demands it. Plus, they're going to continue to expand if we don't. These are pure criminals. Here's Trump.
Listen to these numbers, though. Seriously, if this were a Republican, they'd be stringing them up. Now, listen to this number, because you have to understand what it means. 325,000 children have been lost. They've been allowed to be trafficked all across our borders. She flew in illegal aliens by the hundreds of thousands, and many of these were young children. But we have no idea where, think of the number, 325,000 children are missing. Many are dead. Many are involved in sex operations. Many are working as slaves in different parts of probably this country and probably many others. But she was the border czar. Now she's
probably about it.
The border czar. But she was. It was headlines. Border czar, border czar. But now she doesn't want that term. But whether she was a border czar or not, she was in charge of the border. 325,000 children are missing. She created a fast pass entry program to speed the admission of illegals into all of our ports of entry. And remember when they said, no, we're going now they have a new line.
So, they got rid of the DNA testing on purpose so they can cover their tracks. Anthony Rubin is an incredible investigative journalist and filmmaker. We got a major documentary coming out in 2 weeks. Anthony Rubin is a journalist who reports illegal immigration, human smuggling, the issues affecting the border. Muckraker.com, on X at Real Muckraker, on YouTube, Real Muckraker. And he's giving us a first look on what is about to come out. They're going to be in studio, him and his team, in 2 weeks. He's been kidnapped in Mexico on record. He's just very, very valiant fella and his crew. Thank you for joining us. I don't want to just talk about, first we will, the kind of first look at this huge story you're going to be breaking.
All right, we already heard the first part of that interview already. So, yeah, this should make people pissed off. 325,000 children. I mean, that's we don't know how exact that number is or whatnot, but it doesn't matter. With one child, it doesn't matter. If one child is kidnapped, this is America. In America, this is they're being funneled through this country. Groups, organizations that are doing this. I mean, you guys can't see the videos that he was just playing, but I've gotten sent videos of some of this stuff that's going down the borders that they don't show you guys. I'm not going to say the group that sent it to me and whatnot. There was another group there that actually Glenn Beck is involved with too. So, but yeah. Or that, and then there's another group with that guy that did that movie there. What the hell's the name of that movie? Freedom something. I don't know. Tim Ballard or whatever. Yeah, he's where he put that movie together. And that's true, but he only touched on the surface because obviously he could not get the information that on the big screen that really needed to get out there because they would never allow it. They won't allow some of this stuff. The real disgusting stuff that's really happening out there. And there is some disgusting, sick, filthy, evil rituals going on. And listen, people could turn their heads all they want, cover their eyes, cover their ears. You want to be entertained? You want to watch football? You don't want to be. You can't sit here for 10 minutes and listen to something. You got to go because you got to have constant entertainment. It takes time for these criminals to do what they're doing, and so that means the people that are trying to stop it, it takes a longer time to root them out. Okay. Because nothing happens instantly, and the lifelong pain that people suffer from these criminals is endless. So people need to understand that. So you need to get off your ass and start doing something about it. They got symbols, signs they post in neighborhoods, call letters, like a spray paint, they spray paint an area, tag an area like a back of a stop sign or something. So at a major intersection where a lot of cars come through. And that'll be right. There'll be a signal. There'll be something like a symbol spray painted right there, and you'll be like, "What the hell does that mean?" Like an arrow with an arrow that looks like a Indian arrow or whatever, shaped a different way. And you'll be like, "What the hell does that mean?" That is a symbol for the human trafficking. Somebody just didn't put that there for the hell of it. Okay, it wasn't some kid that was vandalizing that stop sign. And that thing stays there month after month after month after month, year after year, and you wonder why it's not taken down. So and there's a lot of other stuff that's put up there around your communities. So anyway, so we covered a bunch of stuff here tonight. We talked about the simulation with the war with China, did that at the beginning, and then we did the life after death thing. And then, like I said, in a few weeks, I'm going to get that medium on here. She knew that Elizabeth Warren, whatever, I think that was her name, Warren, the old lady that died. Remember that movie with the doll and everything that was possessed or whatever? What the hell was the name of that movie? Conjuring, yeah. So, but I'm not getting her on here. This lady worked with her and knew her, and she's worldwide known, this lady that I'm going to have on here. So she's supposedly some kind of psychic medium and, deals with demons and whatever. So we'll see what happens. Should be interesting. So I've talked to this person, a friend of hers, a couple nights ago. And I said, you should get her on a podcast show. And I said, okay, well, talk to her. So it was confirmed that she'll come on. So it'll be a few weeks. But let's see here. So most of my callers that I lost. So if anybody wants to make a comment here, you need to do it now. Press 1. If not, I'm going to be getting ready to wrap up the show. So make your little comments or whatever you want to do. Call in. And like I said, the human trafficking is huge. I mean, Kamala Harris, the Biden administration, the open border policy that they have, the policies that they have down there has destroyed this country more than you know. The effects of that is long term, and the devastation of this, what has happened with the open borders down there over the past few years, is we're going to pay the price. We're paying it now, but we're going to be paid a lot worse, I'm telling you. And if this election doesn't go right, if there's any funny business going on, I'm going to tell you right now, there's a lot of stuff going on right now. A lot of people are talking. A lot of things can happen. And just like the criminals over there in Colorado or whatever, the riots or whatever can spread city to city, it can happen on the other side too, the other way, because people are fed up. And believe me, there's sheriffs involved, there's legislators involved, there's people high up, there's people in the military that know what's going on, and we'll leave it at that. So, I'm telling you right now, people are sick and tired of what's going on. They're tired of it, and and surely you guys must be out there listening. You've got to be fed up with this. You've got to be sick and tired of not being able to get solutions, not being able to get justice, not seeing things change and seeing things get worse and worse and worse. You gotta be pissed off about it. So, I mean, I know there's people out there talking about it, and there's people out there working to try to fight it. But we got to do more. We've got to do more. We've got to get more involved. So I wonder where Sarge is tonight. Where's Sarge at? I saw a couple private numbers there on the screen. I was wondering if he's on here tonight. And I know he was on here last night. I did a show last night, in case you guys have missed it. I did it at 9 o'clock. I mean, what the hell? Might as well. There was nothing else on, you know. I mean, same old crap. So if you guys miss the shows, whatever, you know, American Statesman's on a Mondays, 7 p.m. And then we got Donnie's show was on. I see him in the chat room. So we got his show on 9 o'clock Saturdays. And then Conservative Radio Nation, they're Fridays. And then Sunday, the Lorianne show, 9 p.m. So, and of course, my show, whenever I decide to do it. So usually Tuesday nights. So anybody want to call in now? Do it now, please. 657-383-0616, because I'm going to get ready to wrap it up. So if not, if you got nothing to say, you got nothing you want to talk about, if you want to talk about the border, you want to talk about whatever, your usual, you know, talk about Kamala Harris. What a joke. Do it now. If not, I saw one person put his hand up and he put his hand back down. I'm not going to unmute you. I'm not going to unmute people unless you put your hand up. So you got to press 1. But if not, then I'll get ready to wrap it up. Let me see one more thing. I already mentioned that. Next Monday, I'll be on there talking about the Federal Reserve on American Statesman. That's about it then, I guess. All right, guys. Be safe out there. God bless the Republic.
But we are making a stand, and we're waking everybody up that 9/11 was an inside job. And you are the minority. You are the cowards who don't know the truth. You're the people that serve this evil system. You're the people that serve a system that hurts innocent men, women, and children. Not just Iraqis, not just Afghans, not just Africans, but the people right here in this nation. You serve a new world order that attacks and feeds on you. And I'm here to tell you that you will be defeated. Your hours are numbered. We've got the energy. We've got the life force. All you've got is evil backing you up. All you've got is greed and liking to look at yourself in the mirror. Because deep down, the New World Order is a pot-bellied, chicken-neck ninny. And all the armor and all the weapons are nothing. You are nothing compared to good. You are nothing compared to life. And you will be defeated. I want the individuals out there. I want free humanity to turn themselves loose, to cut the chains loose, and to use the end of that chain to slap the New World Order right upside the head. You've got the power. You want to know who's going to defeat the New World Order? It is you. You're the individuals that are going to be able to defeat this system. You're the individuals that are going to be able to take down the New World Order. It doesn't matter if Ron Paul wins. It doesn't matter if they rig the election. What matters is that we're starting to stand up. We're starting to move. We're starting to find our legs. We're starting to build our muscle. We're starting to realize that we do have power, and we can work together, and we can take action, and that the naysayers are a pack of weak liars who have never had any successes in their life and who are upset and frustrated. Let's talk to Will in Arizona. Thanks for holding her on the air.
First off, I am a Prison TV Planet member.
Awesome, brother. Go ahead and into your points, and I'll hold you over if need be.
If you really want to have an unabridged idea of what is going on today, look at it's actually a YouTube video, but it's a documentary. Adolf Hitler, the greatest story never told. He actually kicked out a lot of the bankers because they were trying to implode Germany after World War I. And it was the bankers. And when I was watching that, it was 5 hours long, and I started listening and saying to myself, wait a minute, they are just repeating history, but because we are so dumbed down in the sense of our historical knowledge.
Well, I haven't seen the documentary you're talking about, but people can, I guess, check it out for themselves.
The very well-made, excellent, and moving documentary called Adolf Hitler, The Greatest Story Never Told. I want you to do something for me as well, and I would really appreciate it. Before you listen to this interview, I want you to watch the documentary. I know you want to listen to this program right away, but if you haven't already seen it, I want you to stop this program right now and go watch the documentary first. And I'm adamant about watching the documentary because one of the biggest hurdles that the majority of people seem to have, they're basically just kind of set in their ways, and they argue that they already know everything that they need to know concerning this topic? Well, I can promise you, people, you don't know 1/10 of it.
I seriously had a panic attack after I watched that documentary, The Greatest Story Never Told. And for days afterward, I was really shook up. It had such a profound impact on me, and everything started making so much sense, and I felt I've always felt kind of betrayed by the powers that be, but I felt more betrayed than ever. And I started looking back on my entire life and looking back at all the movies that I'd seen.
I just couldn't believe it. I thought if they could pull off this, then anything is possible. Anything.
Yeah.
And that one, I would encourage anybody watching this or listening to this to watch that hasn't seen that documentary, to watch it and go back
with an open mind.
And listen to that interview that you did with Dennis Wise recently.
But that's most likely what got us censored from iTunes, by the way, too, that show.
Yeah, well.
That shows what we're not allowed to talk about. It's off limits,
And that's when I was going through that sort of panic attack realization, that was it. That was the big red flag. I was like, oh my God, like of course we're not being told the truth, because we're not allowed to talk about this issue. When you're not allowed to talk about something, then that's like the red flag right there. If it's off limits, then that's the thing you need to talk about the most.
And the rule to remember is that history is written by the winner.
I can promise you, people, you don't know 1/10 of it.
In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
In Dallas, Texas, 3 shots were fired at President Kennedy's motorcade in downtown Dallas. The first reports say that President Kennedy has been seriously wounded by this shooting.
It is a big idea, a new world order.
It was almost as if it were a planned implosion. It just pancaked.
Either you were with us or you were with the terrorists.
But I also believe that a lot of gun owners would agree that AK-47s belong in the hands of soldiers, not in the hands of criminals.